Welcome to the Ancient Way podcast, where we discuss what it looks like to live as a Gentile following a Jewish Messiah. Put simply, we want to help others rediscover an ancient way by embracing the Jewishness of Jesus. We're glad you're here. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Ancient Way podcast. We are on episode 5 today, and Jim and I, John, are your hosts, where we're talking about what it looks like to live as a Gentile following a Jewish Messiah. And one of the things we talk about a lot is that Jesus is Jewish, which means his life was steeped in Jewish practices. And so our heritage comes as followers of Jesus from this just rich heritage steeped in Hebrew soil. So we are continuing our conversation around the idea of Sabbath and what does that look like for us. And one of the things that I'll just kind of jump right into, I thought this could be interesting to kind of frame some of our conversation where we've been discussing questions that people have asked us. But I was in a discussion with a friend this week around, what does it look like to create rituals and these rhythms to help your kids love God? And immediately my mind went to the Sabbath. But one of the things he brought up that I thought was interesting, where he was kind of lamenting the fact that our Western culture is at odds with a family environment or even just a communal environment, like with a broader community that's centered around God, and how he's just been going through every single week feeling exhausted and drained, and he's running from one thing to another, from like sports events with his kids to birthday parties to just nonstop go. And what kind of stood out to me is maybe one of the reasons Sabbath is so challenging at times is because it is at odds with our culture. And people in general don't have this idea of what it means to slow down and to stop doing all of the things. And it just immediately I'm thinking about Sabbath, because in essence, by practicing it, you are you're kind of putting a line in the sand, putting a flag down saying, hey, we're going to do things differently than the rest of the culture. And that can be really difficult. But it also was what stood out to me is we've only talked about Sabbath a little bit. And so it really wasn't centered around that. But how, even in his language, that was something he deeply wanted rest and wanted this better rhythm for his life and for the sake of his family. And it was prompting these questions that he hadn't asked before. So I don't really know how to start other than just kind of setting this context. Maybe a question for you, Jim, is, what comes to mind when you hear some of these things? And I don't know, we could get into the Sabbath and how it's at odds with the culture, but any thoughts come to mind hearing this?
Yeah. So I was speaking yesterday with a brother that was raised in a Messianic home. His father was Jewish. His mother was a Presbyterian. He grew up celebrating everything and went to a Messianic school where they studied Hebrew, and he resented it then. He loves it now. He loves it. He owns that knowledge in his head now. And I said, so I'm a Gentile, right? And the Lord has brought me to this church. I go every Sunday. It's a Pentecostal church, so they never know when to go home. We start in the morning at 2 o'clock. They're still rolling. And in order to have something that looks like a life, I leave at 1 o'clock, regardless of what's going on. So I mean, usually for me, all the wonderful stuff has already happened, and now we just don't know how to go home, so I go home. But I start Shabbat on Friday afternoon, all day Saturday, because the sun went down. But really, I'm going to start a project now. He's like, no. So my weekend is Friday night, Saturday, Sunday I'm in church, 3 o'clock I'm having lunch. Well, what's left? And I'm frustrated by that, and I want to go to a church that meets on Saturday in the afternoon, so that I'm not scrambling to get to service because it's Shabbat. I want to enjoy the rest he called me to. And he said, well, I'm a pastor, and I serve on Sundays. in a Christian, a mainline Christian church. He said, but my family and I practice Shabbat. You know, he said, if you look at Genesis, what did God do? Go to a worship service for himself? No, he rested. He said, so if you've set aside Friday night and Saturday to unplug, to share it in the community of your family, and then you go to church on Sunday, he says that works. It just works. And I was like, dang, you just...
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I belong in the church I go to, but what it costs my life to be occupied every Friday night, Saturday, Sunday is not something I really want to pay. But I'm finding that the beautiful family experience you can have, and if you're blessed enough to have a community of believers to share it with, like with you, with your extended family, and you go to a church on Sunday, I guess it works. I really do believe, best case scenario, there's a fellowship you go to in the afternoon, you eat that meal together, and you just engage in the larger context of let's say Christian fellowship, or whatever.
Right.
And then Sunday's a day you have to get things done. That to me is the best case scenario. But this also is where the Lord brought me, and I believe it's sowing the beauty of Shabbat. And yet I'm still still going to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that answers your question at all?
Well, I've got more thoughts on this because one, I can empathize with it from some of my own experiences in the past where I was actually working at a church at the time where Sunday was my job. It was the first day of my week, and we worked Sunday through Thursday. And that rhythm was like one of the best rhythms that we had because we were fully present with our family on the Sabbath. And that space, I think, really set us up well to develop good rhythms where, I was doing my yard work and household chores on Friday, and then we would wind down for Friday night, Erev Shabbat, and then we'd Sabbath all day Saturday. And it was great. Like, when I look back, that was still the best rhythm that we've had. And even contrasting it to what your friend is talking about on being a pastor and working, that's true. Like, when I've had to host a service in my home on Shabbat, it's not always restful unless I am very prepared ahead of time. And that was helpful, but there's still an aspect of you've got people in your home, and
Yep.
it's just something you've got to think about. Sometimes they can leave a mess. Thankfully, our family's good about cleaning up after themselves.
Sometimes.
Yeah, but it still can be a burden. So I do think there's a tremendous amount of wisdom in that, that is really helpful. So there's a second part though, and this might be a little bit of a tangent, but the friend that I was talking with, one of the things he said is that his daughter did not want to go to church on Sunday because she found it boring. Mm-hmm. And that this is maybe not apples to apples with what you're talking about because you're in a good church on a Sunday where you feel like you're supposed to be there, right?
Right.
But this was a question for him: is how does he get his children to lean in to loving God and
Amen.
loving other people, and how do you cultivate this this sense of excitement? Excitement, I don't know, maybe that's the wrong word, but awe for God, or this inclination to want to know the things of God. And how much does practicing the Sabbath can it help with some of those things? We're at a spot where we're older and we've grown into these ways, but as we're trying to teach our children, that's kind of what I started thinking about too, in this other vein, where we found our kids really start to look forward to Sabbath, where they kind of count down the days. Is it Shabbat yet? Is it Shabbat? And literally their whole week is centered around that rhythm. And
wonderful.
It's it just got me thinking, how did we get here? How, is it just the act of doing something every day, every week, I mean? But then I contrast it with what my friend was talking about, where his child doesn't have that same mindset towards church on Sunday. So what is it that is helping to cultivate that desire for God?
Yeah, I feel like they're not so your life is pretty regimented with work and et cetera, et cetera. So, but they're not asking, is it Wednesday yet? Is it Wednesday yet?
Right.
But they are asking, is it Shabbat yet? So I think you need to answer that question, whether today or next time. Like, what is it we did that connected? And heaven knows that might even involve you asking them, what about Shabbat do you like? And I think we've had the Disney conversation before. It's like, if we ask my wife, what does she like about we go to Disney a lot, right? She will say nothing about Disney. She'll say, I love that I have a few days regularly that it's just me and you. You're all mine, I'm all yours, it's just us. So it has nothing to do with Guardians of the Galaxy or Flight of Passage or she's Italian, so the restaurants do get her, to be perfectly honest. But
And you, to be honest.
But the thing that she's after is me and my undivided attention. And so the thing that's appealing to kids may or may not have anything to do with Shabbat proper, but they get you.
Yeah.
It may be. And I don't even know if they would be able to articulate it, but they might.
But you know what? They have. Like, as you've said this, they have. I'm like, what do you love about Shabbat? And they're like, you spend time with us. Like, that's literally their response.
Wow.
And they love it because it's undivided attention on that day. And it makes sense, too, because every day during the week, like last night, Thursday, they're asking me, like, can you come watch us play? Can you spend time with us? Like, can you be with us? Just be in the room.
Boy.
I just want your presence. And then
that's
like, I don't know, as I'm saying this now and hearing you talk, it's like, isn't that kind of the same thing that God wants on Shabbat, on Sabbath, is to
with
just
him.
Spend time with him. Just be there.
Yes.
Enjoy his presence.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
It's kind of blowing my mind right now, just talking about it that way.
Well, boy, this is hard because it's so rich. I think so. Obviously, you've achieved something fabulous. I guess as a dad, I would want to prayerfully find a way to reach them for him within the context of this wonderful moment they have, where they're, whether it's the Torah portion or whatever, in a way that could be meaningful to them, and not feel pie in the sky like, yeah, whoever, fine, the ultimate redemptive price, great, I'm so happy. Can we play? What could you teach, or how could you? So, because at some point they're going to leave you, and we're thrilled about the fact that they love Shabbat. Can they carry it on their own? Can they actually have a spiritual layer that they will give to their kids and their wife and whatever? So, to me, I think the mission is finding out how to reach them in a way that's meaningful. I raised my kids in the '90s, and we had Superbook, and we could watch one of those and discuss a Bible story within the context of a kid's perception of the Bible story, and just let it be a slice of what you do, but making sure you've shown up personally and intimately for the rest of the day, because that's where they're connecting. But I've also, it's like giving the dog the pill you want wrapped up in salami, and it's like. So the salami would be the wonder of your presence, and the pill would be, I'm attaching you to Yahweh in the most subtle and regular of ways.
Yeah.
So to me, that would be, because I'm actually teaching you to Shabbat. I'm teaching you that there is a spiritual component too. And so like this week, I've had a really busy week. I have a plethora of early appointments. I don't do early all that well. I never have. And I got up late enough that I wasn't going to get my prayer time. I take my prayer time walking every day. And I'm doing this high protein diet that has fried my blood sugar. And I just was like a dead body in bed. And I said, if I could magically have coffee ready for me, I probably could just get up and go and have breakfast when I return and still have time for you, meaning him. And then he reminded me, he says, there is a cup of tea in your refrigerator you made it and you made too much, so it's sitting there. You could have that. And I really feel like my time was so important to him that he made sure he was going to take care of this comatose boy that's in love with him. So I went in, I nuked it, I gulped it out the door. I felt great, and I did my prayer time, and then I did my day, and I just felt like my time mattered to him. So much so that he took care of my caffeine addiction. Like, it was just so kind.
That's amazing.
So I feel like doing that for the kids. Like, you matter so much to me. I want to spend time with you.
Yeah.
And obviously you've killed it, by the way, because they're asking you, when is it coming?
Yeah. But this is like, I don't know, two things. I feel like I always have two things after you talk. That's great.
Oh, as long as one of them is, then I wish he would shut up. We were all good, you know?
It's perfect. One is that we have started a rhythm. It's been about 9 weeks now where we take some time Shabbat morning. It's usually around 9:30, and we will pick some songs. Normally there's some hymns that we've been teaching our kids, and we'll sing them together. And
oh boy,
it's beautiful. And then we're trying to do the ones that they know. So the selection we have is pretty small right now. So we're trying to teach them some more. So we're doing that, and they're like singing songs that are like worshipful. And then we generally end with the Shema that's actually sung in Hebrew from Joshua Aaron, and they know it. They can sing the whole thing, like word for word. Even my 2.5-year-old can sing it. It's incredible. And so it's not like you described as maybe the thing we don't want to have. Like, they actually enjoy it, and I'll teach them a lesson from the Bible that's on their level and engage them and have some activity that they can draw or color while we're doing it. And so obviously my older son, he's like, it's incredible how much he retains and knows from week to week. And you can see that on different age levels. But I found that to be really good. But the second thing that like, it came up in what you were talking about, but also what my friend was saying is some of this like reminds me of the Jewish lifestyle, for lack of a better word, where I think about the biblical feasts and how they're very familial and community driven.
absolutely.
And you have these milestones throughout the year that are steeped in God and what he's done for you. That's very different than our Western Americanized culture, where you could easily go through every single Hallmark holiday without a thought or care for God, even Christmas, right?
No question.
And so what is like striking me here is how we're trying to find ways. Like, this is part of why I love the feasts, and I'm sure we'll talk about them in the future. We've got some coming up in the fall. But they're steeped in God, and you cannot go, like, I guess you could go through them, but as we go through them, I cannot do that as this detached ritual that's divorced from like God. And we're like, our kids are also leaning into that too. And so what kind of connected to something I read this week, like in the Parsha, the Torah portion this week, is Deuteronomy 6. And I'm going to read it real quick because I feel like it relates. But it's literally the Shema, where it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." And we say this to our kids all the time. You are to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your strength. And then this last part, these words which I'm ordering you today are to be on your heart, and you are to teach them carefully to your children. You are to talk about them when you sit at home, when you're traveling on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. And it's that idea that, like, no matter where you are, like, everything is steeped in God. Like
Amen.
it says in
Amen.
Scripture, everything exists like to Him, for Him, and through Him.
Yes.
And that's the part that got me thinking, is like, that's very, like, it's so easy in our Western mindset to think church is Sunday, that's the day for God, and all of the other 6 days of the week are for us, or to be devoid of what He's doing in us.
Right.
But that's not true either.
Nope.
So, like, how, like, is there a way outside of a Jewish lifestyle to cultivate this sense of awareness of God and how he's working in every single day and every single moment. Because like that's what I think is really important to my kids. If it's just one day a week and that's all we talk about God, I mean, are they really going to grow up to love him with all of their heart, soul, and mind?
No.
Probably not. So
I am sure that in mainstream Christianity, by mainstream I mean like Baptist or charismatic churches, this is possible if the parents are walking so close to the Lord that just by being close to him, they have this witness and drive to create that. Within the context of Hebrew roots or Judaism as a whole, it's upfront and obvious and instructed. Like it's easy to know the way to go because it's so clear. I don't know that it's as forthcoming within your average Christian church. However, there are people who just get this and know this and build it because what they have in the Lord is brilliant. And if he doesn't change. He's not a different God in Israel than he is in America's Christianity. He's the same. So he's going to lead you to that if you have eyes that see, ears that hear, and a heart that understands. It's just so much easier within a Jewish context because it's all constructed in that vein. And I love, to me, that is so seductive to a believer to lean in this Hebrew way because of the overt quality of the familial setting and the community setting, which I just love. I have to back up because you know when you have two things to say, you are so significant that I want to respond to the first thing, but I want to respect your need to finish the second one, but then we have to back up to the first one.
Let's back up.
So I'm listening to what you do with Shabbat with your kids, and I love it, by the way. You should teach. I guess you are right now, teaching how to Shabbat to Gentiles. And I admire what you do completely. I don't know if you do this, and I don't want to insult your intelligence if you are, but so you teach out of the Torah portion something that relates to them, fabulous, right on the money.
Well, actually, we it's not always the Torah portion for the kids. Like we actually have a different type of curriculum that's geared towards kids. Cool. Great guide.
Cool. What I want to say is, I think if you're singing songs and your little kids can sing in Hebrew, you've got to be kidding me. That's just beautiful. And if I had a hat, I'd be tipping it to you. But when you sing, I would actually walk them through the lyrics to say, what does this actually mean? So what you're teaching them is not to sing religious songs, but to enter into communion with the Lord as they sing these songs. Like, I think Christians make a very grievous mistake when they sing a lot of these choruses in church without interpreting what they mean.
Totally.
I want to know you, Jesus. I love you. I want to know you in your sufferings. What? Do you mean that? You're talking to God. You're saying, I want to know you in your sufferings. If you don't really mean that, you should not be insulting his intelligence with this religious platitude that you have no skin in the game, because these, I'm sorry, they're prayers in disguise. And if you are asking him to share, is it noble to share the sufferings? Yes. Did Paul teach it? Yes. Are you really asking to share in his sufferings? These words mean something. You're standing before the living God. And I'd want to teach my kids to recognize the lyrics and mean them. And then don't insult them if you can't. If this is too far for you, we should sing another song, because our respect of God is so great that our words to him, our songs to him matter. Yeah. So I and it's not so much that I want to make my kid afraid to sing before God, but I wish I could, wonderful counselor, you're beautiful, and all these things. I said, you're actually saying this to him. He's receiving this like an actual thing that you are saying. Do you recognize how beautiful your interaction with him is right here? And just teach them to understand that worship is deep and rich and true, and it's not a bunch of songs. It's meaningful.
Totally. I think maybe we talked about this earlier this week, but the Hebrew word kavana means
Yes.
like intention, and
Yes.
like
Yes.
you're approaching prayer or worship with intentionality, not this flippant, oh, I'm just saying words because I've got to quickly recite this, X number of times a day. But no, it's like savoring the words and meaning them from your heart as
Yes.
you sing songs to the King of the universe, whatever it may be, or say a prayer. And I am totally with you on that. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
incredibly important because I grew up in this like Christian environment, and it's so easy to just go through the motions, regardless of where you land. If you're in like a mainline Christian denomination, or you're steeped in Judaism or Messianic Judaism, it's so easy to just, yeah, I'm doing this because I have to, instead of like out of this intense desire and love for God. And
Yeah.
it takes, yeah, we've got to cultivate that.
Yes.
So I
Like,
love it.
the song Waymaker,
Hmm.
like you call him Waymaker, Promise Keeper, Light in my darkness. Um, my God, that is who you are. Like teaching that song.
Totally.
He is a waymaker, and if you feel lost, he can make a way where there seems to be no way. In fact, King David, promise keeper, you can trust him to honor his word.
Right.
Light in my darkness. You ever don't know what to do? Well, he's the light in your darkness, and actually
Right.
teach them. Every one of these words is you and him. It's your life right there. And when you sing it, you might be young now, but there might come a time when you need a way where there seems to be no way,
Right.
or you need to know that his words said this, and you can trust him to live up to it. You're literally taking a song they were singing and turning it into worship, turning it into directives for their life.
Yeah.
So to me, it is so rife with opportunity to train up a child in the way they should go. They thought they were singing, but you were actually teaching them about life. And the songs we pick to sing, I'm after teaching you something when you utter these words.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think it's the
Thank
same way too. Like, as we've talked about Kiddush, right? But the
Yes.
first line, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe." We've done some of that with our kids. Like, we're blessing God's name because we're so grateful for who He is, and He's the
Yes.
King of the universe, which means He
Yes.
rules over all things, and
Yes.
nothing escapes His sight. And so we trust Him out of our faith in Him. And so there's like
Yes.
so many opportunities to teach that to kids. And I think that's like right on point with what we're saying, is like, how, maybe that's the question, how do we become more aware of those opportunities that just kind of fly by us because we're too busy, we're in a hurry, instead of really like taking the time to talk about it with our kids,
Yes.
to unpack the things that we say
Yes.
every single day.
So by Kiddush, you mean the opening prayer that you enter into Shabbat on Friday.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm saying this for the sake of people who don't know.
Yeah, like that's honestly something that, so in Hebrew, it's Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. And if you are in like a Jewish home, I've heard a lot of people, because I'm like, how do I learn these words? And
Yes.
I've listened to it, and there's like a cantonation to it, like where you say it the right way, and that can be really important in a Jewish setting. But what I've observed sometimes is they just rush through it because you've got this huge long prayer that you've got to say in Hebrew, and you miss that ability to savor and really like linger on what the words mean. And my point is, you could do this in you could have the same challenge in a Jewish context or a mainline Christian.
Yeah.
But
Isn't this where you quote Heschel?
probably.
I think it is. I feel it coming.
Oh, it might be. I don't have it on my tongue right now, but
It starts with something like, don't offer prayers
oh
like
yeah. Don't let the
empty
words,
words
fall
or-
off your lips like dead leaves in autumn, but
Yes.
rise like birds to the expanse of eternity.
that.
Um,
I'm
yeah,
in
I
love
didn't
with that
realize I
line.
memorized that, but it's so true. And like Heschel's book was so convicting in this, because he's the one that I first read talking about kavana and bringing this like immense intentionality to prayer. And maybe a little off topic, but sometimes Christians can be like, look at Jewish practices and say that they're religious and they're steeped in ritual and are devoid of meaning. But what Heschel says, and what I think is also in Scripture, it's really the posture of our heart. So
Yes.
regardless of where you land on that, like the church spectrum, like we've got to be intentional about how we say the words. Do we say them with meaning, or do we not?
You know what? That sentence means so much to me that I don't have any tattoos yet, but if I do, I may very well tattoo that line to my body because I believe that line with all my heart and soul.
Yes.
That I don't want to offer him dried leaves that fall in autumn. I want to do the birds that ascend into the heavenly realm. Wow, it's just the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. It's just gorgeous.
So good.
Honestly, John, I think in the future we need to actually share Kiddush. Like, how do you do it? What do you say? Why do you say it? What does it mean? And actually say,
great.
if you wanted to try it, this is how you do it. Because that's exactly what we're here for, to say, these things work for us. These things really didn't work for us. Here's why. But, you're so much more well-versed than I am with the Hebrew words like Kiddush and whatever. I think we owe it to people to say, you want to try it? So go ahead and choose rest. Just rest. Just chill out for it. But you want to kick it up a notch and align more with Israel? This is what it looks like on a Friday night.
I love it. Let's do that next episode. That sounds...
I think we should.
All right.
It might be a solo performance because you'll be teaching me,
all right.
quite honestly.
What we'll do, I'll have you get a glass of wine and I'll lead you into it. So I'll have to have your participation. It'll be great.
Oh, boy. Sounds perfect.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this conversation, episode 5 of The Ancient Way. We'll talk to you again in the future. Thanks for listening to The Ancient Way podcast, where our work is made possible by generous supporters like you. To find more podcasts and free resources, we invite you to visit theancientway.org. See you next time.